Cloud SQL in GCP is a very great fully managed database service that allows you to create MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Microsoft SQL databases. Fully managed and with minimal maintenance and management efforts from your side, this service allows you to just not worry about your database solution and instead focus on building your applications and environment. But connecting to a Cloud SQL instance is something that can be tricky at times, and it can be extremely dangerous at other times as well. In this video, I will show you how you can easily and securely connect to your Cloud SQL database instances without sacrificing the security and agility of the platform and of the solution. And just before I start on this, please don't forget to like the video to help other people who would like to know more about connecting to Cloud SQL securely and easily, to help them find this video easily and quickly. So as you know, GCP is a massive cloud platform that provides you with many services and tools to do your work and achieve your requirements. And one of these services is Cloud SQL. Cloud SQL is a managed database offer and service that lets you create MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Microsoft SQL databases in the cloud with a fully managed mode and approach. You will get rid of the maintenance, backup, and patching work and only focus on maintaining the data integrity and access to these instances and tables. This is an ideal option for cloud-native solutions and implementations, or to be used with other infrastructure as a service applications and needs such as virtual machines in Compute Engine or Kubernetes Engine even, and so on. Of course, when you want to use this, you will need to access the instance somehow, the database instance I mean, and here where it will get tricky and sometimes bad for you. You see, when you create a Cloud SQL instance, it comes with a default IP address by default, but no source IP networks or no whitelisted IPs will be allowed or pre-configured until you do so from the Connections tab. Basically, you will need to whitelist the public IP from where the connection will come from, and while this adds some sort of security, it is not a perfect solution, because if you use a dynamic IP address, such as if you're connecting from your home, or maybe if you're having like a 5G or 4G connection, then you will need to constantly keep managing that whitelisting rule and whitelisting setting in the Connections tab, just to make sure that you are allowing the right IP address and you are not locked out of the instance. And even with this, you are allowing an IP address that it's not only for you, it's a NATing IP address that allows multiple other people or multiple other entities. So it's not exactly 100% secure, and it's not 100% matching to your own IP and to your own network. And sometimes you may just tell yourself that let me add all or let me allow anywhere or anything, just to get rid of this headache of constantly updating the rule and constantly changing or tracking your IP address to make sure you're updating the rule and all. And this is the point where it will be bad, and it will be a very bad idea actually. While indeed you are using a managed Cloud SQL instance from Google, but you are still responsible for its security and access control and all of this. And it's your responsibility to ensure proper access to the database and to have this proper access set up on the instance. If your instance has public IP, and if this public IP gets compromised or discovered by attackers or hackers, then it's still a Microsoft SQL, it's still MySQL, and it's still PostgreSQL at the end. And people will just be able to execute attacks against these database services and eventually breaking in and damaging your data and information. So what's the solution for this? Well, if you're using a static IP address, then maybe the connections over a public IP would be possible. Or if you're also connecting from Compute Engine instance, then again, you would whitelist the public IP of the VM and you just keep using the public IP of Cloud SQL, but you are now sure that only your VM will be able to access that Cloud SQL. Maybe also you can whitelist the NAT gateway IP address if you're using a NAT gateway. But then what if there was another solution that does not use public IP addresses at all, What if you don't even want to use public IPs in your scenarios anyway? Maybe if this is something is not acceptable for you at all, and your only acceptable solution is by connecting to private IP address of the instance. Well, in this case, you will have an answer to your problem with these two settings or with these two things in GCP. First of all, you enable and set up your instance to use a private IP address instead of the public IP address. This does involve two steps or two items. First of all, you remove the public IP of the Cloud SQL instance. The next step is basically you set up an automated or an automatic VPC peering between your Cloud SQL instance and the compute engine VPC where your workloads are there or will be used to connect and access this Cloud SQL instance. The next step here is to provision a new GCE VM, or even you can extend this and utilize a VM on your on-prem if you wanted to do this, but then you deploy an application called Cloud SQL Auth Proxy. Cloud SQL Auth Proxy is an application developed by Google to allow you to connect to Cloud SQL instances securely and without the need for authorized networks or without the need to configure SSL to use SSL in the connection. Now, for Cloud SQL Auth Proxy to work, you will need to have it deployed in a place with direct connectivity to the Cloud SQL. It does not change the connectivity planes. It does not bring up new connectivity options or anything. The Cloud SQL proxy must see the Cloud SQL instance through a normal IP connection so that it allows you to connect to the Cloud SQL as well. Now, the point of using the proxy here is that even when you are using the public IP of Cloud SQL, you won't need to manually configure the authorized networks or anything. And this is the first scenario because you can also use it with the private IP address only and without the public IP address. And just connecting back to the previous point, if you don't need or if your requirements don't allow you to use public IP addresses, then this is the answer for you. And in general, this is the connectivity architecture for Cloud SQL Auth Proxy. Another point for this to work is you need to have the right IAM permissions assigned, and this can be through a service account or it can be through a service account of the VM that is running this in Compute Engine. But the option or the setup that I will show you will involve creating a service account and downloading the JSON file for the service account and then use to connect with the Cloud SQL Proxy. Cloud SQL Auth Proxy is a binary that you will download and install on any supported operating system. In here, I will show you how you can use it on a Linux VM, but then this is the same concept that you can use and apply on other operating systems such as Windows, Linux, or even Mac. And this is the download or the about page for this. And if you just go to the right side index and you go to the download and install, you will find the instructions for whatever OS that you're using. So these are for Linux, these are for Mac, you have for Windows, and then you get to also have a Docker image so that you can run it in a container, which is a very awesome feature actually of this. So in my case, I will just copy this command and then I will run it in my VM, and then I will execute this one so that I change it into an executable file, and then I will move on to the next step, which is configuring my instance configuring this to connect to my Cloud SQL instance. So going to my SSH session, which is this one, so I bring it here. This is my SSH session. And all I have to do here is just executing this command, basically just pasting this, downloading this, and then changing that file into an executable one. So I will do chmod +x cloud, and now if I do ls, I will find the file that I have downloaded. Okay, so with this, I am now ready to connect to the Cloud SQL instance or to configure the Cloud SQL proxy to connect to the Cloud SQL instance. But before I do this, let me actually show you around in my environment so that you can understand what's going on and how things will work and all of this. So going back to the admin code, to the Cloud Console, sorry, this is my Cloud SQL instance. And as you can see, there is the private IP address. There is no public IP address here. And this might be more clear if you go to the landing page of the Cloud SQL service. You will see the field of the public IP address empty, and there is only the private IP address. Now, this is very important because I'm going to connect to this through a VM in Compute Engine through the private IP address, as you can see here. And that connection will happen through the instance connection name value. This is the one. So this is a very important value that you need to copy from now. So I will copy this just to keep it stored in the clipboard. So let me take you now to the VPC network, and then VPC network peering. You will find a single peering that has been created for me while I was enabling the private IP address on the Cloud SQL instance. And if you go back to the introduction of this video, I mentioned that Cloud SQL Proxy needs an IP connection to the Cloud SQL instance. This is why I'm using the private IP address, and this is why there is this connection or the VPC peering. It's just that there should be a network connectivity and the rest will happen through the API. Now, if you go to the VPC networks, you will see a single VPC here with a subnet in this region. So with this VPC peering, this subnet is able to talk to that Cloud SQL through the VPC peering. One more thing, or actually two more things that I need to show you more than this. If you go to the I am an admin, and then if you go to service accounts, you will find a single service account here that I have created manually, and I have also created a key for this service account. This key will become very relevant now because it will provide the authorization information that will be required by Cloud SQL Proxy to be able to access this Cloud SQL instance. If I take you to the IAM page, you'll see this service account now has a single role, which is Cloud SQL Client, which is the required role for this to connect to the Cloud SQL instance. The final thing that I want to show you here is an API that is called Cloud SQL API or Cloud SQL Admin API. And this admin API is also required. You should have enabled this. It should be enabled. It's required for Cloud SQL to work and establish the connection between your whatever instance or whatever VM to the Cloud SQL instance in GCP. So these are the few prerequisites that you should have. I already copied the Cloud SQL connection name, which will be relevant and important now. So if I take you back to the SSH session here, and when I start typing the command, which is very simple, so / and then cloud, just pressing tab for autocomplete, then instances equals the connection name that I have just copied a moment ago to the clipboard. And then I should type after this equals, right after this, there should be as a single word. So it's a single word here, equals, and then I want to type TCP, then colons, and then the IP which I want to receive connections for, or basically the scope that I want to listen for. So if I just don't type anything, if I just type the port, it means that this is running in a VM and it will only accept connections that are coming from this VM to route them to Cloud SQL. If I type zeros, then colons, and then 3306, it means that this Cloud SQL instance will listen on any incoming connection, or it will accept any incoming connection and it will route it to the Cloud SQL instance. Just don't confuse this with opening this to the public internet or anything. This is not related to this at all. It's just telling that the Cloud SQL instance here, the Cloud SQL Proxy instance, that it should accept connections on its network interface. That's all what it's telling this instance to do. So the next argument here is IP underscore address, address types equals private. This is telling the Cloud SQL instance to just connect or to just look for the private IP address of the Cloud SQL instance, and don't assume that there is a public IP address. It just saves time, I think, and some calls in the APIs to determine if there is a public IP address or not. And then the next one is the credentials file. This is the credentials file here, which will provide the authorization information. So I should type credential file equals the file name. Now, I hope that I typed everything correct. And when I press enter, you will see now the connection or the Cloud SQL proxy instance will start listening for incoming connections. And once we connect to this, it will route us to the Cloud SQL instance in GCP in the backend. And you see now it's saying ready now for new connections. And if you want to validate this, you can simply connect to the IP of this instance on the port 3306. But then there is one single trick that I have done on this project, which is this VM that I'm connected to, it does not have a public IP address. So it's only having an internal IP without a public IP address. So there is no way for me to even connect to this instance and access the Cloud SQL database that is behind this instance now. So this is where IAP comes in, and this is where you will be able to connect to your Cloud SQL instance without even a public IP address. And I have already enabled IAP on this project. If I take you to the IAP and admin identity auth proxy in a new tab, you will find it's enabled, and you will find that my user should already have access because I have ownership there. So I am the owner and I can already access the VM. The firewall rules are already set up and everything is in place to allow IAP connectivity and to enable people and to enable me to access this VM through IAP. So now all I have to do here is to just set up an IAP tunnel by opening command prompt. And then that command is, hopefully by now it's very common for you, which is gcloud compute start IAP-tunnel. And just me reveal the instance name. So the instance name is SQL-auth proxy testing. And then the port that I want to connect to, which is 3306, which is the port that is being used by the Cloud SQL Auth Proxy, and then --local-host-port equals localhost, then also 3306. Actually, I didn't type equals here. And then, just out of making sure there are no errors or anything, this instance is in Europe West 1B. So I will type --zone equals Europe. Can't type properly today. -B. So this is the command to establish the IAP tunnel, and it is now listening on this connection or on this port. Now, in order to validate this, all I have to do here is open the MySQL workbench and then connect to localhost, and I should be able to access the instance here. So Cloud SQL with Cloud SQL Auth Proxy. I'm not sure if this is a very long name, but then when I just click the test connection, it's going to ask me for the password, and I already have the password somewhere here. 1 second. Okay, this is the password. Remember this. And it should give me that the connection is successfully established. Now, if you want to validate further, just to see what's going on there, so I'm going to connect to this one. And just to confirm that I am connected through the whole thing here, you will see in one of the databases, in schemas, there is a database or a table called test Cloud SQL. It's a database. And if I take you to Cloud SQL here, you should find the same database there. So this is the same instance that I'm connected to. And all of this is happening through the private IP address without exposing anything or any component to the internet with a public IP address. So this is the same database that I have in the MySQL workbench. And that's all. You can see how easy and secure it is to access your Cloud SQL databases without even sacrificing the security on the account of connectivity, and also by bringing some other useful features and stuff as well. If you are a developer or if you have developers in your organization, you can even let them connect to their own systems as if the database is installed in their systems by replicating this same example actually, or by just deploying Cloud SQL Proxy directly on their system if you want to keep using public IP addresses of Cloud SQL, although I don't recommend doing this. And again, what's best in this is that you can take it further by implementing this in a Docker container or a Docker image, or even you can put it behind or you can put it as part of a managed instance group. You can guarantee then the availability of the proxy VM and the availability of this, and you can ensure that it is healthy all of the time with automatic health checks and even automatic scalability if at any point in time a lot of pressure and a lot of requests came in, so that you can scale this horizontally even. And finally, if you have any questions or if you have any comment about this video or any of the other content, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments section, and I will be more than happy to discuss it with you and to provide any feedback or answer any question for you anytime. Also, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to get more content, and click that bell button so that you can get notified whenever I put any new videos. And also, if you are an existing Google Workspace admin or if you are considering to be one, then please check out my course on Udemy, Google Workspace Admin, the complete course. It is a comprehensive course that will cover a lot of topics such as users and groups management, device management, data security and privacy, and a lot of stuff actually. You can get it from the link below in the video description at a discounted price. And once you do that, you will get lifetime access with constant updates and new content all of the time. And finally, thanks a lot for your time and thanks a lot for watching. Until I see you again in a new video, stay safe and take care.